I think the best way to go about getting into a partnership is you have to find someone with complementary skills, not someone that's good at doing what you're good at, someone that does something else, and then just do one deal.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you're enjoying this show, you know what to do. Leave us that honest review, give us some feedback. And if this is your first time listening, make sure you hit that follow button or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Garrett Lynch. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. After graduating from Illinois State University with a degree in marketing, sales, and organizational leadership, Garrett went on to manage a successful nightlife business in Chicago. He leveraged his contacts in the industry and he started investing in small multifamily projects with foreign investor capital. Now, this eventually led him to co-founding a multifamily acquisitions firm in April of 2013 at the age of 26 years old. He started with D-class properties and eventually scaled up to a larger portfolio. Today, he's partnered with Michael Blank and Andrew Niffin with the goal to acquire 150 units plus through Nighthawk Equity. Let's welcome to the show, Garrett Lynch.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Hey, listen, Garrett, I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill us in on some of that background?
Yeah, so I basically started out just doing hood stuff. I was owning a lot of Section 8 properties in Chicago. We found an equity source that was into that type of thing, and they would cut checks for us to go buy these things and own them. And it was really like low hanging fruit. Like the numbers look really good on those, but the headaches are not really factored into the underwriting. So didn't love that slumlord lifestyle, and eventually ended up parting ways with that business, getting bought out of it. And then found Michael and Drew a few years later, and they had like a lower number of apartment units. And I was like, hey, let's do a deal. Did a deal. We tried to do a deal, didn't work out, and then we ended up doing 11 more deals together, and kind of in the first couple just kind of came a group, exclusive group, and just went on a buying spree after that. And so we own right now uh right around 400 million, and the goal is to get over a billion in a couple years. It's a little bit harder right now, obviously, given the environment, but yeah, that's the background.
I love it, man. I love it. You talked about, starting out really in some rough areas, buying those D-class Section 8 type properties. And you mentioned that the numbers on paper look great, but when you think about the actual work, the headache that was involved, it didn't kind of match up to what you were putting in. From there, you ended up finding Michael and team and ended up partnering with those guys. Today, you guys have over $400 million of apartments under management and looking to grow and scale that to $1 billion portfolio. Let's start back where you started, right? Because everyone's got to start somewhere. You got your whatever capital you got, you invest in the assets, whatever you got to get started. At what point did you realize that, hey, this strategy doesn't really work for me, or the headaches of this are just too much?
So we initially got into these types of properties because we were wholesaling them. And so I was finding investors in even different countries like Canada. And there was a guy that was flipping them, and then we would find the investors on like LoopNet and sell them these supposedly turnkey deals. And so we knew that asset class, and we're like, well, let's just start buying them because that would be the next best thing to do. And it really took about, I mean, we knew there were headaches to begin with, but I think we didn't really realize how much and how bad it was until we started owning a little bit better stuff. And once we start owning a little bit better stuff, we're like, oh, these aren't as hard as these. We had like 2 and 3 flats, like a group of a portfolio of them, about 300 units total. in the south and west side of Chicago, and noticed that it was taking an immense amount more effort to manage and run those sites than it was just, C or B class apartment complex, really C class. That's kind of as high as we went in that business. And so once we saw that contrast, we were like, oh, this is not where it's at. We even converted all those units to Section 8 because the in those areas that people lose their jobs pretty quickly. So even if they have a good paying job, they would lose them, and then we'd be out the rent, and that would happen so often that we had to convert the entire portfolio to Section 8 just to give us a chance. And there's still ways for people to get out of Section 8 payments too. If they don't want to live there anymore, they can break a window or break something inside and not allow the inspectors, or allow the inspectors in, but not allow you to fix it. Right. And so we had issues like that happen where we go into abatement and you'd stop getting paid because you keep failing your inspections because they wouldn't let you in. So there's there's a lot of things that go on with that. When you have that many Section 8 units, it just becomes this like constant headache because these people don't care about your apartments. They'll just break walls, they'll knock things down. They're getting their rent paid for free. So uh, they just don't care about the place. Not in all cases, but in most, we'd find that there was a lot of deferred maintenance and damage, and then you can't charge them back after because they don't have, funds to pay for it. So, and their credit score is, sub 500. So it's just a lot of when you run into a lower tenant base, you've got also lower employee levels. So it's just, a really high level employee is not necessarily going to work in a more dangerous area. It's just how it is. And so you're dealing with that on top of it. So your vendor level's lower. So that's what happens when you buy these properties. It looks really good on paper though. Like when you go and underwrite it, it looks like amazing returns because you're getting, whatever, $2,000 for your rent and you only paid 80K for the two flat. And so it's great. But what you don't factor in, what you can't, is the crime, the damage, the constant deferred maintenance. Like you just rehab the whole thing, spend a bunch of money, and then they just destroy it and you can't get that money back. Not quite enough for an insurance claim. So you just kind of have to eat that cost. Uh, and you also don't plan for all the inefficiencies that come with with having those types of employees that just don't show up and are not reliable, all those things.
Yeah.
You also can't really third party management just can't keep up. It's too many things happening, too many inspections, too many problems in general. And so you have to self manage, which is what we did. And even doing so it was an uphill battle. The worst thing about those types of deals is there's not really a lot of equity in the other side of them. So it's heavy cash flow, but it's inverse to like an A class building. A class is like a lot of you're dealing mostly with equity, right? So it's your your lower cash flow on the A class, very low cash flow, but high potential returns on the equity upside. This is the opposite on these types of buildings. Low equity upside, if any, and a lot of cash flow potentially, but you want a good combo of both. And so that's why like B to C class deals are really good because it kind of gives you both. You get the appreciation potential and a cash flow. And so we pivoted away from those.
I appreciate you breaking that down. I mean, one of the challenges I see with newer investors is they fall in love with those pro forma projections, right? You see on paper, oh, this is a 13% return or 14% cash on cash, and your eyes light up. And we forget sometimes starting out that there's a reason that those properties are able to project those kind of returns, but there's also a human component of this. And when you're talking about the human component, I love the insight you shared. First and foremost, we're talking about the resident. And this is not to bash anybody, it's just the reality is they're going to have more fluctuations in their life. Job security is not going to be as secure. They're going to have more transitional things happening. You're in these areas where there's higher crime. There's just more stuff going on. And because of that, it's harder to bring on great vendors, great employees, great people to help run this because they don't want to deal with a lot of those kind of issues. your great quality, top notch PM does not want to work on that asset, right? They want to work on the nicer stuff. So you're going to go through a lot of turnover with yourself, your vendors, your partners, which is why you ended up self managing. But now you got to take on a lot of those responsibilities. So that's one of the things that, again, it gets hard to quantify. But when you're looking at those pro forma returns, you also have to, consider the return on your own time. There's return on investment, the capital, but then there's also return on your time. And if you're now spending 20 hours a week at one property, are you factoring that into your analysis? Probably not. So make sure you understand how much work is involved because that's going to be really key. And that's why you hear, guys like Garrett talk about, yeah, started here, but there's a reason I transitioned into a little bit of a better asset class moving forward. Really great point there. So was there a moment where you said, you know what, I'm done with this. We got to sell all of this stuff and fully transition to something a little bit better?
Yeah, we got to like around the 2000 unit mark, and we were noticing that it was taking. We only had about 300 Section 8 units in Chicago, and we had 2,000 units total, and it was taking up probably 40% of our time. And that was when we were like, dude, we have to peel this off because it's just way too much headache for the cash that we're making. It's not worth it. And so we did end up selling those to people, and we ended up taking a loss on them. Um, but it was worth it just to get our time back. And so that's when, and then that whole process was, I mean, extremely difficult. Also, there was because you're not, you're going to take a loss. You got to sell all these individual units. You got to People want to inspect them all. They're all in different places. That ended up happening. Ended up getting it done, but it was very difficult even to sell those things because there's only a limited buyer pool for that type of product. And so, but yeah, I'd say when we got to about 2,000 units, we're like, this is just not at all worth it.
Yeah. I think you said two things that are really important. One is understanding where you want to go. When you got to 2000, you recognize that 40% of your time was being spent on the 300 units. So, definitely an imbalance of how you were spending your time. And you had to make the decision to take a loss. And obviously, you didn't want to take a loss, but I think as investors, it's always hard to recognize, hey, you know what, we're not going to make money here. And to go ahead and still move forward with that decision. And there are probably people today who are listening to this right now who are being faced with that same scenario where it's probably best for them to cut bait, take the loss, move on, keep growing, but they're having a hard time coming to that, coming to grips with that decision. How did you figure that out? I mean, how did you get comfortable to say, you know what, hey, let's just, it's okay. It's okay to take a loss. Let's move on. We'll rebound.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we just looked at our overall exposure on that side of the business and what was it holding us back from doing? What was the potential on the other side? And it was a very easy decision at that point. And there's as you scale up, you're like we maybe had 5 investors total on those other deals, and obviously we want to do well by them, but at the same time, there's opportunity cost, and so we were able to get them in some other deals that made more sense and just kind of like communicate with them like, hey, this is in the best interest of us dumping these at this point in the market cycle. You're going to take a little loss here, but there's other upside potential in these deals. We'll even cut you maybe a little better deal on these ones to kind of smooth that over. And so you just, I think you need to look at your overall exposure in on time, on just liability. Also, there's a lot of liability with those sites, and what the opportunity cost is, and assess all those things when you're making a decision. But if there's people out there right now that are trying to assess it in a different way. There's people that have variable rate loans and they're trying to assess, hey, do I go and raise money from investors to keep this deal alive and continue forward? Or do we just cut our losses? And I think that's the most relevant situation today. And I think you really have to think objectively about what that looks like. This is a huge issue across the entire industry. There's very attractive debt that existed in the last, whatever, from 2020 to 2022, and people took advantage of that. but it was variable rate debt. And when things swung in a completely different direction, there's a lot of headaches, a lot of problems now in general. And so you really have to think, is it good money after bad at this point? And what is my opportunity cost like for this situation? And just weigh those things out and see what makes the most sense for you.
I appreciate you sharing that, right? For those folks who are in that situation, you're talking about the sunk cost there. You want to throw good money after bad, but then also be honest about the outcome. I think one thing that troubles me is there's this hope strategy where they just hope interest rates come down. There's no actual, tactical strategy that you can implement other than hoping something external happens. And I think if that's the situation you're in, you need to have a deeper look and deeper conversation to make the right decisions there instead of hoping the market comes back around. Control what you can control. And again, sometimes you can move forward and figure out a way to make things back up. But I appreciate you sharing that because I think it is very helpful and timely for many of our listeners to just understand how to think through some of these tough decisions. Um, Obviously, you've done a lot better than that Southside portfolio. Talk to us about kind of your role with Nighthawk. You kind of talked about how you guys kind of got hooked up, but tell us a little bit more about Nighthawk, kind of your role and where things are sitting today.
Yeah, so I knew I needed to restart in this apartment business. I had a lot of skills that I built through owning and vertically integrating the last company. And so I just needed to find new partners. And I know at the time I kind of noticed an opportunity with Michael and Drew, and they were doing good things, but it just wasn't super scalable, their specific business model. And so I came in and I kind of presented them with, hey, this is what it could look like to scale these things up. But let's see if we work well together. If I brought a deal to you guys, would you want to do it? And I'll run everything and you guys bring the money. And and they said yes. And so I found a deal shortly after that and brought it to them. They wanted to do it. And then we just partnered on one deal. And I think that was key because you're not like, if you're trying to find partners out there, you're not trying to commit to some like long-term thing. Maybe it doesn't work between you. Maybe you don't want to work together. You don't like each other. You don't know those things until you get into a deal together. And so just committing to one deal, I think is the best way to enter into any kind of relationship to see if it works. And if you like it and things go well, do another one. And then you can make something that's more permanent happen. And that's how we took it. That's the approach that we took. So eased my way in with one deal, see if it was going to work out between us. And actually, that was like the hardest deal of my life. It was a 545 unit, two property portfolio, and it was in El Paso. And I don't think that these guys had tapped into their full potential as far as raising capital yet. I didn't know that. So, but we tried anyways. At the end of it, we ended up not closing the deal and losing all of our earnest money. It's about 350K on that deal. And it was under contract for like a year. And so, so it was a big loss in the beginning, but we didn't want to kill each other at the end of the process. And so what it did is it built trust between us because we made all our decisions together. And then we went on to the next deal and ended up closing that just before we lost that one. And so we had a win under our belt. And we're like, okay, let's go buy another one after that. And then after a couple of those, it materialized into more of like a permanent thing. And we ended up not having it be just us three as partners. We had a couple like other partners in there in the beginning. And then we could really try to work to scale it. And so since then we went on, it was just I was mainly in charge of in the beginning just transacting these deals, finding the deals, underwriting them, making sure that they're going to work for us, breaking into other markets that we wanted to. So we had to break into Atlanta, which took a while to get access to that market. And then I just kind of got into every facet of the business to the point where I knew my last business where I was most effective, but I also knew what I wasn't good at. And so before even entering a new relationship, I had spent time hiring consultants to help me get good at certain areas. So like one area, accounting, I was never super strong in that. I was just terrible at accounting in college, didn't like it, didn't know anything about it. And so I hired someone to teach me how to do my own bookkeeping and all the higher level accounting. And I basically did a course with them, but it was one-on-one for about a year. And by the end of it, I was good. I was like, I'm pretty dangerous at this. I don't love it still, but I need to know this to own a business. And there are other areas like that that I had really honed in on before entering into that next relationship. So people say, "Oh, only do what you're good at." I get that. That's fine, but I think you still, if you're owning an apartment business or any business in general, you should know enough in those other areas where you're weak just to be dangerous. And that you may end up liking that area of the business. You just turned off to it before. So you might get into it and be like, you know what, actually, I didn't like this before, but I'm pretty dang good at it. So I now it's not as hard for me to enjoy digging into these things. And you don't know that until you get there. And then still double down on the things that you're the best at. That's where your main value is going to be created. Get better and better at that side, but don't just be completely closed off to these other sides of the business. Like I didn't really know a lot about construction before starting with Michael and Drew, and someone had to figure it out. I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. And we made all kinds of mistakes in the beginning, but ended up honing it into a really effective construction company inside of our company right now. And that was just learning, and now I love it. I think it's a lot of fun
Yeah.
to do these things. So we've taken it to another level for sure. I mean, now we're obviously dealing with the markets and the challenges with that, but we've scaled up to 11 properties in 2 markets, sold a couple, and we're going to continue going.
I love it, man. Let me break down a couple things, man. One, you talked about the partnership, right? When you left that previous partnership, you had a lot of things in place that were working. You just really needed new partners. You took it slow. Started with one deal. From there, you ended up scaling together. You also talked about you had things that you enjoyed and things you didn't like, but as an entrepreneur, and anybody investing in apartments, you're an entrepreneur. So don't get too confused. Entrepreneurs have to have the ability to wear multiple hats. So even though you didn't love accounting, that was something you said, hey, I need to at least get, decent at this. So let me go learn it so I'm at least average. If I need to do something in accounting where I can recognize certain things, let me develop this skill. Because as a partnership and entrepreneurs, you guys are as strong as your strengths, right? And you obviously know what you do, but you don't want to have these blatant weaknesses. So that was a skill you chose to develop, and that helped you grow. I want to go back to the partnership thing because I love the story, and I've never heard this story, so it's just really great to hear it from you. Because I think on the surface, if someone heard that, you came to this group, you said you'd find a deal, they'd raise the money, great, you go partner together, and sounds like maybe there were some challenges with being able to raise all the funds necessary on that first deal. I think a lot of people would say, "Oh man, like it didn't work. I don't want to partner with these guys. They didn't do what they said they could do, or there was a miscommunication of what they could deliver." But for you all, you actually had a failed first experience, and the reason I think this is beautiful is I think too often when we take that approach, we want to partner on one deal first. Well, if that first deal goes great, well, great. Now we're in a great spot, right? And it's not until we get resistance or trouble that I think we really get to learn about people. And even if you partner with somebody or you have a first deal, it's like a marriage or dating, right? Like, of course, everything is great in the first few dates, right? But you kind of need to have that first, whether it be fight or argument or disagreement or challenge, that that's where you really learn who these people are and how you work together and how you resolve conflict. And too often people end up working together before they face that level of adversity. And I think the beautiful thing for you guys is you got on your first deal and you didn't want to kill each other. So when you move to that second deal, you already had a good framework and you can build off of the losses and say, okay, here's what we need to do different and build from there. Can you just give me your perspective, not necessarily just from you, I know the work you guys do, but I know you guys coach and mentor a lot of other groups and other people who want to partner together, but just elaborate a little bit more on kind of the challenges you see with people looking to partner without maybe facing some of that adversity.
Yeah, so I think a common one that I see is like people get together with their friends and they don't really know, they put each other into roles like friends or even family, and they don't know to collectively, they don't know much about the apartment business. And then so it's everybody kind of like the blind leading the blind, or there's like 10 GPs in a deal, and like how are you going to figure out who's doing what inside of that? Um, I never really understood that model. I understand, people do that, but there's always going to be like one or two people that are taking the lead on the project, and they're going to kind of get stuck with most of the work. You have to think going into these, it's not like it's a 5 year plus project that you have to own. Even though you get paid a little something in the beginning, someone has to own and run these things for the next 5 years forward. If you're buying an apartment complex. And so it's not, you have to look at it like that. I think when it comes to partnering, okay, you're going to be married to this person for 5 years on this deal. And what are our roles and responsibilities going to be? How is this going to get broken out? I think the best way to go about getting into a partnership is you have to find someone with complementary skills, not someone that's good at doing what you're good at, someone that does something else, and then just do one deal and see if you can further hone in what that's going to look like. And then you'll see how you work together. It's not easy, but if that person's driven and motivated to get a deal done, and you work in the same capacity, you guys work well together on the first one, you're going to kind of flush all those things out. Even if it's only 2 months, you have a good idea about how each other works. And then if you really want to get close, lose money together. Lose some money with that person, and you'll see everything will come out at that point. And that's like their first thing that we did, was lose money together. Now, I'm not suggesting you can avoid losing money. Please, please don't lose money. But the millions are made in the valley, my man. So it's not about like your wins. That's cool, but you're gonna learn the most from your losses. And so everybody knows that. And so these losses that we had right out the gate, I think, just showed everyone's colors about our integrity. It showed how we work in adversity, what our decision making skills are like, all kinds of things that came out right away. And without that loss, we would never figured that out. And so it might have shielded us from the real true value and understanding how we're going to work together as a partnership. So hopefully you guys close the first deal that you're in as a partnership. That's great. But if it doesn't, I think you're going to learn a lot more.
Garrett, I love everything you just said. And, there's a theme that's playing up for me. And I'm curious if you have thought about this in your own life, but there's been two inflection points where you've gotten some feedback and maybe the results weren't what you were looking for, but how you interpreted that feedback and pivoted. So we talked about kind of the South Side portfolio, dealing with, uh, C minus, maybe D class type properties, building a massive portfolio, 2,000 plus units. I mean, that's not a small feat. Building this up and then selling off a portion and realizing you're going to take a loss to progress forward. And then you talk about entering into a new partnership and actually losing money and not doing this first deal, but continue to move forward and working together. How much of this is mindset driven for you? I mean, do you actively think about that throughout that process? What are some of the things that you do to kind of make sure that you are thinking about, these opportunities, these losses, these challenges in a way that allows you to continue to move forward?
Yeah, I really think that entrepreneurship mostly is just getting kicked in the face over and over and over again with like a little. I think it was Hermosi said something like this, and it resonated with me so well. And it's like you're just keep getting kicked in the face over and over and over again, and then there's a little glimmer of hope, a little bit of happiness, and then you're right back to it. And I think you just have to be wired or learn to be wired to be able to handle that. It's no different being in apartments or any other type of business. It's just you solving problems nonstop, and then teaching other people how to solve problems nonstop. And then you have to rise and motivate them and be the leader of the pack, and make sure that they got their head on straight and they're doing things how they should. And that's like just what it is. And if you're not willing to work for free for a while or for a period of time or whatever it is, then it's probably not the right step for you. Or maybe you work something to keep the lights on while you're figuring that out. But there are definitely multiple periods of time where you're going to have to understand that you're going to be working for nothing, and that's going to be the most valuable time when you're working. So, like right now, is for many people in our industry, that's now. You're not doing deals, so there's not like fees coming in. Your current deals maybe are in trouble, so you're not really distributing. All the things that should have happened didn't happen, and so you have to dig down deep and you have to figure out how to overcome that, or else what's the other outcome? You just close up shop and call it a day and then go live on the streets? No. So it's really you being able to survive those down moments. And from a mindset perspective, I'm not really like the type of person. There's some guys that get like super motivated by like these pump up videos. And I know guys like that they look at them all the time and that's like their motivation. I think a healthy dose of reading is definitely important just to level up. Uh, but I find my inspiration from and where my mindset comes into play from my peers. So having people around me that are going through similar things. In fact, we've put together a few different groups privately of other owners that are just able to talk about these issues. And so it feels normal. Like, hey, there's foreclosures on the horizon. There's these things happening. This is all normal right now. And it makes you understand you have those friends that you can lean on to keep your head in the game. And you don't feel like you're so siloed or you're on an island. And having partners helps with that too. So you have someone else you can talk to about what's going on. It's very lonely. If you're doing it by yourself and you don't have peers around you to keep your head in the game. And so I think that is a huge component of keeping things in perspective. You can't do it by yourself. And I think when I broke out of that last partnership, I was just spinning in circles trying to figure out what my next move was, looking at buying businesses. I was trying to do it all by myself. And I was not warmed up to a new partnership because my last one ended badly. So I was afraid. I was like, I don't want partners. I don't want to deal with that pain and suffering. And I finally realized that I was more powerful with partners. I did something about me. My competitive nature comes out even further when we're in a partnership. I want to prove to them, I want to prove to everyone else that I'm able to kill it out there. And once I came to terms with that, I just did it again, and I wasn't afraid of it. It's kind of like getting in a new relationship. You're like, well, that last one sucked. I got burned really bad, but you still go forward anyways and do it.
I
You
think it's a
could get
perfect
burned again.
analogy, man. Yeah, and that's the perfect analogy, right? It's like it is. It's truly a relationship, but just because you have one relationship end poorly doesn't mean that relationships are the problem, right? And you just want to go around and be single forever. But,
Yeah.
to your point, you also know kind of how you're wired and how you get your energy. And, you got that energy by being around partners and having peers that you could talk to. And that allowed you to kind of grow and scale. And I love your point too about just being an entrepreneur, man, just getting kicked in the face. I mean, we could certainly go heady with the mindset thing, but if you're willing to get kicked in the face and get up, and just keep working, keep grinding, keep pushing towards your goals, eventually you're going to figure it out and have success. And you've been able to do that. What's next for Nighthawk? And we kind of talked a little bit about kind of the current state of the economy and things like that. But for you, for Nighthawk, what are you all looking to do over the next 12 months?
So right now is a weird time because it's a lot about survival more than anything. We have deals we did a couple that have variable rates on them that we need to solve for, obviously. That's priority number one. But using this time to really level up, and we see where we want to go, but there's some skills that are needed to get to those higher levels. And so us getting there, I mean, we want to be prepared for this 24-month window when all the amazing deals are on the market, and it's a killer time to buy, which I think is right now too. Like you can pick up a deal at a 6.5 cap when things are at 3.5, and that's a pretty good step. Like I think great. And we have a deal under contract now, even. And I can't believe the price we're getting it at compared to where the peak of the market was. We saw where there's a defined peak in March of 2022, and it's just gone downhill from there. And so for Nighthawk, we're really trying to prepare for that next wave. And because this is where you're really going to be able to make and earn a lot of money and build a lot of investor rapport. And everybody's kind of shelled up right now and they're fearful. And that's when you have to put in an extraordinary effort for free mostly. You're not really making a lot, but you're working a lot and you can't be afraid to do that. And so that's what we're really doing is we're hunkering down, improving our processes. Our team is actually, as a byproduct, becoming closer because they're having to work through these same challenges with us. They see how we're leading them through this. And so they're getting tighter, which is pretty cool. And then just see like, all right, let's pounce on the opportunity once it's here.
I love it. I love it. Listen, if you're to learn more about Garrett and his team at Nighthawk, go to their website. Go to nighthawkequity.com/join and learn a little bit more about what they've got going on. We'll make sure we link to that in the show notes. Right now, we're going to transition to our round of insights. All right, Garrett, you've given us a couple, but give us a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
The biggest downswing failure was a failure in the partnership. That was the hardest, heaviest. It took me years to recover from it, but it was the biggest upswing. It's like I use the analogy of a slingshot. So it was like pulling back a slingshot and just letting it hold there. It's super painful, and then releasing it. And I shot up the other direction so quickly, but it was the most painful experience.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Digital or mobile resource. I would say if you guys aren't using Just Call for outreach or for investor, whatever, like it's a really good tool for a team to use to make outbound calls when you're raising capital or any other sales marketing related type thing. And you can really get your team together using that.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
So I really like the book. It's weird, but it's called The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. And that book is really cool. Especially if you're in a stage where you're trying to figure out your entrepreneurial journey. I read that book in like a day when I got it because I was so excited about what he had to say, and it really gives insight as to what types of businesses are the most passive versus the most active, being in them, and how you can really become a millionaire faster than waiting to get old.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Cold plunge. I do that.
Cold plunge guy.
Yeah, I'm one of those weirdos. I got into it a little while ago. Not like, I don't know, it hasn't been that long. It's probably been 8 months. And I just finally ordered one. Like, I was just jumping in my pool in the winter when it was cold. And I was like, man, I'm doing this every day. This is great. And it just wakes you up. It's like unbelievable. And so ordered one, just came in a couple days ago, and I love it.
I love that. All right, great. Give me your number one insight for building great partnerships.
So my number one insight is to really make your partnership a focus and an intentional process to improve. So you can't let problems just go unsolved. You want to have meetings consistently with the partners, with one or both or whoever's there, to get on the same page about what your goals are and where things are, because their lives are going to change, your life's going to change, and things may shift around that. And so in order to make it successful, you have to be very open and honest about the communication and about things that are going on in your lives consistently.
I love that. Well, let's transition mood a little bit here. You're in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
What part?
Scottsdale.
All right. Scottsdale, Arizona. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Favorite place to grab a bite to eat. So if I'm going like luxury, Dinner, it's gonna be a restaurant called Dominic's. And if I'm going like low tier, like just junk, it's Portillo's because I'm from Chicago.
Love it, man. Two good options there. We'll make sure we link to both of those in the show notes if you want to check those out. Really enjoyed our conversation, Garrett. Listening to you talk about kind of your journey starting out, with those D class, hard knocks type properties, grinding it out, but recognizing that, man, this is a lot of work and the juice just may not be worth the squeeze at the end of the day. Making a decision to take a loss on selling some of those assets, what it took to get comfortable going into a new partnership and maybe having that partnership start off a little rocky. And to me, it sounds like that was actually helpful because it allowed you to work through some of those dynamics in the early stages to realize, hey, these are people I want to partner with moving forward. Today, you've built a $400 million plus portfolio with these partners at Nighthawk Equity and continue to grow and scale that going forward. Again, if you guys want to learn more about Garrett or the team at Nighthawk, you can go to nighthawkequity.com/join. Garrett, thanks again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you and hope you have a great day.